Hey, what's up, everybody? Video 44 coming at you with another video. All right, I'm following up a statement that I made yesterday during the trade deadline because it came to pass. I said there was a world, a rather strange world, but a world where the Atlanta Hawks would waive Bones Highland. And they waived Bones Highland today. I didn't actually think it was likely. But when you look at their roster, you realize that they picked up so many guards and have retained so many guards that it really did not make a whole lot of sense for them not to. Um, Given the fact that even though he's a pretty nice microwave scorer, very nice microwave scorer in my opinion, they just don't really have a need for that at all on their roster. There would be no path to him really getting any playing time. He's not somebody you're going to send to the G League necessarily at all. So he was released. I don't know how good Bones Highland is defensively, but for the Los Angeles Lakers, you wonder if you can just raise your overall talent level by bringing a guy like that in. Now, granted, we have specific needs. Our team must address the defensive guard position. And so if he can't necessarily play defense, I don't think that's the way. Now, I know we just picked up Jordan Goodwin on a two-way. I believe he's defensive and rebounding, eccentric guard. So he might fit the bill a little better. But he's on a two-way, and we do have a roster spot. And I think we could use another guard on top of Goodwin being in a two-way situation. Is Bones Highland my pick? I got to see what else is out there. I think I'd rather have someone else. But the someone else I had in mind doesn't necessarily fit on the team anymore. I was thinking a guy like Markelle Fultz. And although Markelle Fultz was pretty damn defensive when he was drafted, with the knee injuries and all the stuff that has happened, I just don't know if I want him to play that role that the Lakers going to want him to play if we bring him in at this point. Before we got Luka, he made a lot of sense. Now that we have Luka, I don't necessarily see a role for him. I think we got our playmaker, point guard position settled for the most part. I think you don't really need to really get too much more insurance there. LeBron can facilitate, Austin can facilitate, Luka obviously as well. I don't think it would hurt to have another playmaker just in case you lose multiple playmakers. Since we have so many reliable pieces on the ball coming their way. Luka with his injury history, Bron with his age. Austin's pretty reliable, but you want multiple playmakers on the floor to simulate the style of offense that we're going to now be using with the three being in place. So having multiple players that do that, waiting for opportunities to play may not be very favorable to them, but it may provide us the insurance to continue running our stuff when or if one of them go down, or God forbid, two of them go down. But I think the truth is, if two of them go down, so too does your ceiling of actually doing anything. So investing in multiple guys that do what they do may not overall win you the games you need to make that make any sense any damn way. So that's also part of it as well. I think you'd probably be best to reinforce plugging holes rather than reinforcing more depth in areas where you're otherwise extremely strong. So that's why I think that Markelle Fultz is probably off the list at this point. I would feel more comfortable if we had one more, but I don't know that that's necessarily the way we go with our only open roster spot. I would personally feel a lot more comfortable if we had one more rim protector too. I am not as high on Jackson Hayes as a lot of Laker Nation is right now. Especially since I got Mark Williams, who we're bringing in, is understood to not be a defensive center. I don't need two non-defensive centers that catch lobs. That's great. But I don't want to rely upon Jackson Hayes. I personally don't. I think he's played pretty well too. Over the last couple of weeks, he's actually played pretty well. But I want somebody that's going to play defense in front of him. And unfortunately, James Wiseman's out for the season. I don't think he fits the bill for that either. But he just got released as well by the Pacers. But he's out. And he doesn't fit that bill. But like if that player existed, that would be probably something I would want to do if we couldn't get that guy that can defend the De'Aaron Foxes and the John Morants and people like Tyrese Maxey and Darius Garland. I think the Lakers are still gonna have a lot of trouble with those type of point guards, a whole lot. Because outside of Vanderbilt, I don't know who the hell we're throwing in front of those people, and I don't know if I can count on Vanderbilt to stay healthy at all. Don't know that yet. So for me, I think we need a defensive point guard, shooting guard combination guy who's fast of foot. That's why I was asking for us to get Davion Mitchell, and seeing what he went for frustrated me. PJ Tucker in 2 seconds. I was like, man, we could sure use that piece. Because he fits the bill. He's somebody who's going to make life hard on people like that. He may not be able to stop them, but he's going to give them an off night. Hence his nickname. So, Dyson Daniel-ish type dude would be perfect for our situation. Somebody we can just throw at people. Because now we've gotten rid of all those people. We traded away Cam Reddish, who you could say could do some of that. He's not the greatest player, but he does have the ability to defend very well. And if you don't have him, you move on from Max Christie. You can tell me that Gabe Vincent is going to play that role, but when it comes to the super fast, athletic, speedy dudes, I don't know that Gabe Vincent can really keep up with those people. When Jamal Murray starts cooking, you cooked. That's what it comes down to. So I would prefer somebody else be in that position, being a bit more athletic, bit more lengthy, maybe even taller. So that's the thing. It's like players like that don't just grow on trees, man. You're not gonna be able to pick up just a Tony Allen type of piece. Like they're not out there for you right now. And so that's why I think Jordan Goodwin's probably the piece we picked up. That's probably the best option they saw there in that way. If in the draft next year, I would try to target a player like that in the second round. Buy myself a second round pick if possible. And try to target the best player I can find in the middle to the back of the second round like that. Jamal Sheed went as a second round pick. He would be perfect right now. He went to Toronto. He's going to have a great career as a second rounder, in my opinion. He would have been great to find in the second round. Because he does that exact thing. So, we found Max Christie in the second round. We see what we are developing him into. Dallas is enamored with him after 2 games. I saw one person say they think he's going to be their next great player. I'm open to it. I don't think Max has that type of upside by any stretch of the imagination, but hey, man, I'd love to be wrong about that. I'm a big Max fan. So I'm not surprised by his ability on the defensive end. He was drafted as a guy who shot the ball poorly but projected to be a shooter. So, that he's playing well this year is not a surprise at all, and he's going to just get better and better. And I would have loved to have not had to give him away, but he definitely wasn't holding up the Luka Doncic trade, so we just live with that loss. But, man, we need somebody to play that role, and we need them to be fairly good. Fairly good, man. So that's the tough part. I just don't know that we can do that. And if anything gets in the way of us winning the whole thing, it's probably because you can't stop De'Aaron Fox. You can't stop John Morant. You can't stop players like that. I don't. Jamal Murray, as I've already mentioned. Who else is up there? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But, when you start talking about players like Shai, there's no stopping you. You could put that great defender on him. He's still going to cook him. It's just the level of talent that is. Luckily enough, we got 2 of those guys ourselves. And I don't know who the hell's guarding those people either. That's what makes me feel comfortable as a Laker fan. You got a lot to try to figure out when you're going up against the LA Lakers. You got to figure out how to stop Mark Williams, in the paint, offensive rebounding. Anything we brick, he's likely going to clean up and put back. You got to figure out how to stop Luka Doncic And it's not just that he's so great and cerebral and shoots so well and all these different things, but he's huge. He's a big guard, very big guard. That's what makes him impossible. And then you got LeBron James. Obviously, you know what the story is there. He's huge as well. I heard people say that they think we're going to be a small ball team. But you got hefty players in all of those roles. So you're not. Does it really equate to small ball, really, when everybody's about 6'9" or 6'8"? Like, when I think of small ball, the way the Lakers used to do small ball, we really had small players on the floor. Everybody was 6'4". But I can't really look at that as small ball if I have players that are effective at pushing people out of their spots. Now, granted, when you go up against certain players, you probably will be small. Going up against Wemby, without Mark Williams on the floor, you are small. If you try to go to those small ball lineups with 6'10" people, 6'8" people, you're going to be small going up against the centers of the world that are actually really good. But to me, I think we're one of the bigger teams when I consider what it is that we're putting on the floor. I think we're fairly big. I don't see too many 6'5" dudes, 6'4" dudes. Everybody's massive at their position. And so that makes it very difficult to see certain teams defend us. I think it's going to be tough to defend us. Because the players that we have to be triple teamed, doubled and triple teamed. You can't play single coverage against Luka Doncic. There's no one defensive player that can stop him. You can't play single coverage against LeBron James. There's no one single player who can stop him. And now that we got this guy, Mark Williams, he's going to often demand a double team. And who are you doubling off of in these situations? One of those stars, Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura? As efficient as the Rui is, that's a dangerous situation in and of itself. Dorian Finney-Smith, he makes a living off shooting threes in these situations. That's what he does. Gabe Vincent starting to hit shots. If that continues, more of the same. So that's the problem with trying to defend the LA Lakers. If I'm another team trying to figure out how to stop this team, I don't know that I have the option to do so. The problem is just in place. What you got to figure out is what poison you're willing to take. And when it comes to trying to pick between LeBron James and Luka Doncic, I can't think of too many duos that were more lethal in the history of the sport. If I'm being completely honest with you. You got to start talking about the Golden State Warriors with Kevin Durant and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson when you start talking about this type of thing that we just put together. And I don't think people really realize that right now because they haven't seen it. And to a point, even though we obviously saw Luka in the finals, I still think there's like a little detachment from what Luka actually does for a lot of people in their mind's eye. For myself, I have to speak for. I ain't seen Luka all year long, so it's like I had to watch highlights to really have what I have in my head going on right now. But I assure you, this offense is unguardable. It's absolutely unguardable. So now it becomes a situation where, as I assess whether or not the Lakers are a contender, the first thing that comes to mind is the meshing of the styles. LeBron James and Luka Doncic. Can they defer? Who takes the shot at the end? Do they lose trust in one another if the guy missed the shot in a random game? These are the type of things. Or they get frustrated with one another when they make certain mistakes because they're so great and they expect so much out of one another. Those are the type of things that really concern me. Defensively, obviously. But more so, are we going to mesh? The personalities, Luka's body language, is he going to be fine out there? Just in general, is he okay? Like, those are the things that I really worry about. When we figure all that out, our offense is our best defense. Because Williams is such a fantastic floor runner, a lot of those leak out plays that we used to get with AD, we should in theory be able to get with Mark Williams. From what I understand, he has fantastic hands in general. He catches everything just like AD did. Maybe we can run some of those same conceptual plays with him. And your overall offensive continuity looks so much better because you're replacing Max Christie with Luka Doncic, essentially. So while your defense ain't better, Now your continuity and your floor spacing and everything that you got going on with the offense just elevates in some very, very unfathomable ways. So, yeah, man, I'm ready to see what this looks like. As I predicted, the Lakers are going to, in fact, I don't think it's actually a fact yet, but they pretty much have said that they're going to start him on Monday and he will not play on Saturday, which is what I initially predicted. I just didn't see them having him come in on a Saturday at 1 p.m. They want him to be debuted on a primetime game. That's exactly what I think. Primetime hours, late night, not in the 1 p.m. games where Lakers usually play poorly in the 1 p.m. games anyway. I just don't see, it's an awkward way to start a basketball game in terms of that hour. A routine is thrown off and this and that. You're going to see maybe 3 games on schedule at that hour. I just did not think they would ask Luka, who's coming off an injury, ain't played since Christmas, to debut on a new team in a 1 o'clock game. I've watched basketball for too long. I just didn't think that was something they would actually do. I was right. If I was ESPN, I would have anticipated that. Like, y'all went and changed your schedule expecting Luka to debut on Saturday at 1 p.m. That's something you wouldn't have did if I was in your building. I would have been like, nah, don't do that. He ain't gonna play that game. He not. So yeah, man, that's what I see there. I don't unless something changes. And when you got a superstar like this, maybe he just says, "Yo, I want to play." Ain't nobody gonna tell him no. But aside from that, he's not expected to play until the Utah game on Monday. So yeah. And as good as the Lakers are playing, he can rest. I mean, it's not like we need him to hurry up and get back in here so that we can start winning. We've been kicking everybody down. So he can rest his injury a little further and get more incorporated into this offense, into the playbook and everything. Am I worried about his over dribbling when you got LeBron James and Austin Reeves needing to touch the ball consistently to get what they need done? Luka's so ball eccentric, so highly overused. And the one thing that I watched Dallas Mavericks fans say at times was our ball movement looks so much better now that Luka's gone. We love Luka, but it was a lot of people standing around watching him dribble the hell out of the ball, creating offense. I don't know that works for us. I think that he's going to find out that people are not going to like that as much here. He's going to have to be more of a part of the offense as opposed to being the only person dribbling the ball, creating the offense. Even if he hits every shot, it's going to eat away at the best of Austin and the best of LeBron. It's not going to work. He's going to have to sacrifice a lot of those touches so that other people, those other two, can orchestrate at times. And he's going to see it makes sense to do so to get the most out of them. Your team is just overall better if you do that. I know he figured out how to do that with Kyrie. So he might be a little more equipped to do that now than maybe in past years. But that's what's going to be that's what the test is going to be for Luka. Once you start getting into your Luka Dallas Maverick bag, you're going to probably find that players are going to want you to move on at certain times. And that could potentially be what the static could be for this team early on. I'm sure they'll figure it out. It probably won't take but 7 games to figure that out. But that's what's going to have to be figured out. This is the flow of who controls what. Bron don't defer to nobody, but he's also never played with nobody like Luka. Luka don't defer to nobody, but he's also never played with nobody like Bron. So it's like, are they gonna be overpassers trying to make sure that each other is comfortable? I could totally see that be how that go. They probably pass a little too much. You know, that kind of thing is expected early. But yeah, once they figure it out, man, it's gonna be hard to beat us, man. I'm telling y'all, it's gonna be hard. Once they figure this offense out, and we still got enough time to figure it out, basically half a season to figure ourselves out, assuming we don't have any injury issues, knock on wood, we gonna be one of the most talented basketball teams on the offensive end anyone has ever seen. Top 10 all-time offense. It's what potentially this looks like in my head. bringing us. It was already about to be scary without Mark Williams, but now you bring us that centerpiece, dump it down low, clean up messes on the offensive glass guy that gets us second and third opportunities. You can't give Luka second and third opportunities alone. That you can't do. So yeah, this is what I see in my head, man. I'm picturing it. The balance of trying to make sure everybody gets their looks at shot creation and play creation is going to be the struggle. Defense it goes without saying, we're not very talented, but we do have some highly efficient, talented defensive players. So we're going to have rotations that allow for defense when some of those starters sit down, which I think is going to catch some people off guard. You look at the Laker team and say they can't play defense. Then we put Gabe Vincent, Vando, and Dodo on the floor with two other guys, and suddenly now we're playing defense. Now we're getting 2 and 3 stops in a row. You're like, what the hell? And you got to understand, Vando, Dodo, and Gabe Vincent can really defend. So while you're sitting here saying the Lakers can't defend, you're going to have stretches where you go ice cold because Vando effect. Teams that can't defend don't often have great defensive players somewhere specked around on the team, and that's exactly what we got in Vando and Dodo. Great defensive players. So that's going to make us a little better defensively than I think people are probably going to see as they assess this team from afar. They're like, oh, they can't defend. We just got to outscore them. And then we put those defensive lineups on the floor, and they go on droughts. So that's what I'm counting on, especially come playoff time. You got to pick your poison, man. There are going to be times when people are going to try to take away Luka. He probably still going to cook them. And then Bron's going to go off and Austin's going to go off. There's going to be times when people want to take away Mark Williams and Luka and Bron are still going to go off. There are going to be times where people are going to try to take away both Bron and Luka. And maybe they're effective in getting them an off night. Austin goes off. Mark goes off. Rui has an efficient game. Like, this is the type of stuff. It's like, yo, I don't... Especially the way Austin's been playing as of late. Now, he has an awesome night. Maybe Luka's having an off night, but now Austin's going off. It's like... From game to game to game. I think we're going to be very difficult to beat every single night so long as we have our full spectrum of players on the floor. As long as we can stay healthy, and healthy is everything for this team. Health is all things for this roster. But if this roster stays healthy, I legitimately wonder if we're going to lose enough games in the playoff series to be ousted against really anybody. That's what this has done. I haven't given much thought to the matchups, particularly Cleveland and Boston in the finals. I haven't given much thought to those matchups. So for all I know, the size and the length of those teams could be just still too much for us. I think I could totally see something like that with Cleveland, with those two stilts. Mobley and Allen might be a little too much for us. With Williams not having a whole lot of experience and our bigs not being very talented, that could probably be where we probably lose. But Boston did not address their center position. They got too many role players playing the center position, and Porzingis, who's not a great bet to stay healthy. You're going to be running some small ball in Boston, and it better work. I think from what I've been seeing from afar, it could be the presence of Peyton Pritchard causing this, but it looks like Drew Holiday is starting to run the father time. So if you can't count on Drew Holiday to be the old Drew Holiday, and now you can only count on maybe 1 or 2 good games in the playoffs of Al Horford at this point. And then you look at some of those other dudes on the team, they role players, lesser guys. I'm not afraid of Boston like I'm supposed to be. They don't look as dominant to me as they did last year. They don't. There's a lot of people who are shooing Boston in like they about to win the championship. I think the field has gotten much greater around them. and they're more likely to get hit harder in the playoffs. They're likely to get hit harder. Maybe not in the East. Boston is probably going to run through the East. But once they get to the finals, depending on who they see, they could run into a situation where they just don't have what they think they have when it comes down to it if some of these dudes start to age. And if it requires to get the most production for you to have Peyton Pritchard on the floor, Jaylen Brown on the floor, Derek White on the floor, now you're too small. And you didn't address your center position. So that's what I see with Boston. I'm telling y'all, man, Boston, I really thought they needed to address that center position. I really thought they needed to be players for people like Miles Turner and, hell, Mark Williams. If they could have got him, that would have really been great for them to have him back there. They didn't address the center position. They're moving forward with what they have. And I just think now, with what it is they're faced with Karl Towns in New York, the Stilts out in Cleveland, I think they could get hit hard. They may win those series, but they're going to get hit hard, man. And some of them small ball lineups, they're going to get out small balled this year. Especially if they have to go to Peyton Pritchard, whom is playing great, but it's like 6'2", man, 6'3". They're going to get outboarded in certain situations. And they're going to overshoot the three. And it may work, it may not. So I don't know, man. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not picking Boston to win the championship this year. I'm not. I don't love them like that. And another team that I'm really concerned about that most people are not concerned about is OKC. And the reason why I'm concerned about OKC in a different way is because I just think at the end of the day, they don't shoot well enough. And maybe that changes with Chet coming back. They now have a Twin Tower effect, which is crazy, considering that they got Hartenstein in place who's going to rebound everything, get assists off, and Chet now officially back. So that could create a dynamic that I'm not seeing in my head. But they be having these games where they just can't shoot. You got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander attempting the 70 shots, and then Lu Dort attempting like 9 threes, missing all of them. That type of thing, I just don't think works in the playoffs. And this is going to sound strange, and it doesn't have to stay this way because they got so many different assets they can just switch things around. But I think OKC may be built for the regular season. They may not necessarily be built for the playoffs. We got to see the greatness of a guy like Chet coming in on top of J-Dub, on top of SGA, to really like, okay, yeah, that's not what it is. But based on what I see right now, it could be what it is, man. They could be a team that destroys in the regular season, and then when they run up against certain teams in the playoffs, they get fizzled out. That's what we've been seeing. And you can blame that on their lack of experience, but I'm starting to wonder if it's just something structurally that just ain't quite right with them. They really do need to get a shooter or two that maybe they don't have in place in more prominent roles. They got plenty of playmakers, but their catch and shoot players aren't overly talented. And when you go up against highly efficient offenses that attack you, and particularly from behind the arc like Boston does, that could really be a problem for you. Cleveland shoots the ball like that, it could be a problem for you. So yeah, I'm not picking both OKC or Boston to win the championship this year. Neither one of those teams look as scary to me as they probably got most people believing they are. I don't see it like that. I don't see it. They got the talent. OKC has the ability to build something that's going to win for every year. Don't get it twisted. And they'll take the data that they get from this year to know what they need, and they can get it. But for right now, I'm thinking they're probably getting ousted somewhere in the playoffs. They're probably getting ousted. They don't scare me like I should be afraid of them, put it like that. So yeah, man, that's what I see. Houston, I think this is year one for Houston. I don't know about them either. They're starting to fall right now. which was kind of inevitable because I never thought they were as good as their record was showing. It's time for them to start falling. They're a little too. They got out to a great start. They got out to a nice, you know, half, but the regression we thought was pretty much imminent for those guys. But their future is super bright, just like OKC's. I'm not worried about them in any way, whether they do great things or not. They're going to be fine, but I just don't think they're quite ready. Not like that. They're not ready yet. So this is when I look at teams like Memphis, Denver, Dallas, the Lakers, and I say I could very easily see some of these teams that we got back here actually making the finals. I can see that because them two teams at the top, they're youngsters, and there may be some things they need to tweak in their roster to make them as good as they're ultimately going to be. So that's what I also see there. Another team I think is interesting to pay attention to, who's super offensive efficient in the Eastern Conference specifically, is probably the Milwaukee Bucks. Because at the end of the day, they got Dame and Giannis, and you can't underestimate those guys. And now they brought themselves some better bench talent. Marshawn Beauchamp, they turned him into Kevin Porter Jr. That's a massive upgrade because Marshawn wasn't even being used at all. And Kevin Porter Jr. is starting to play like Kevin Porter Jr. right now. He's finally starting to look like himself from the Houston Rockets. So this is a perfect time to pick him up if you're Milwaukee. Meanwhile, Milwaukee picks up Kuzma. Kuzma's already won a championship. Now, as I said, they ain't defending nobody. Their defense is awful. But you add Dame to that, Kevin Porter and Kyle Kuzma are going to have nights where they punch people out. They can win games together, even if Dame is out. So, like, for me, Milwaukee got a lot better leaning into what was already their strength, which was offense. I think they got better. And they didn't lose any of the champs. You thought they may move on from Lopez. You thought they may move on from Portis. They didn't. Now, they did lose Middleton, but Middleton ain't never out there any damn way. So what they did was bring in a player or two that they would otherwise use and got rid of some people that they didn't have at all, basically all season long. You move out Middleton, he's been out all season. You move out Beauchamp, they don't even use Beauchamp. And now you're bringing in KPJ, Kyle Kuzma. High-level offensive talent. Especially in roles like this, where they're going to be getting open shots like crazy off of Dame and Giannis. So I like Milwaukee a lot right now on the offensive end of the Easy East to maybe win a playoff series and upset somebody. Yeah, I could see them upsetting somebody. I could see them beating somebody like Boston. I could see that. They can't defend worth a damn, but they're going to be able to score 140 points. And if Boston has a cold night against them or has the wrong injury, that could be their backside. So, yeah, pay attention to the Milwaukee Bucks. Because what they did was move out some stuff that they weren't using and moved in some stuff that they're likely going to use a lot. So that's a very good thing for that team. So, I don't think they can win the championship necessarily, not without playing some damn defense, not with some of the offenses that are actually out here. But their offense is going to be lethal too. Very, very lethal. So, yeah, man, that's what I see there. I think the East got a little better, man, just with Milwaukee overall improving. Now you got to put them in the space where, as a team that's going to punch on people like Cleveland, Boston, and New York. Orlando's taking some steps backwards, but I think they could probably make a late push because Paolo and Franz are coming back from injury and they don't look like themselves. But I do wonder what's going on with their rotation. I just don't think they got a proper pecking order or something like that. I don't want to sound ignorant, but it seems to me that they may have a coaching issue. From afar, it seems like Orlando may have a coaching issue. So and a roster issue. We talked about that. Their roster is kind of wacky, forever wacky. To be honest with you, they just gotta shake some things up a bit better. So I don't take them seriously at all. They're a first round exit in most situations right now, unless they can get Franz and Paolo to lead them through the flaws of their roster and their coaching. I don't see them getting out of the first round. So yeah, these are the things that we're thinking about, man. Just paying attention to the field, man. Now we got to try to adjust what our mind is, and understand the East got stronger at the bottom too. Because now you got to look at Toronto as a team that's not making the playoffs, but could easily beat some of these playoff teams because they otherwise would be a playoff team if the season started today. That's gonna hurt some people. That's gonna hurt some people in the Eastern Conference. In a tight race, I don't know how tight it is. Probably ain't that tight, but for those who are in tight situations, standings wise, they can run into a Toronto team and lose. Why? Because you got to deal with BI, you got to deal with Portal, you got to deal with Quickly, you got to deal with Barnes, you got to deal with Sheed off the bench, you got to deal with Mogbo. Who I didn't mention? It was somebody in the starting lineup I didn't even mention. But you get the point. RJ, like, this team is loaded. And they're in tanking position. But they could do something like what Portland's doing in the Western Conference right now. And if anybody's looking at Portland, go check out their wins and losses over the last 12 games. It's weird how good they've been. Portland is going crazy right now. But that's what I see Toronto potentially being able to do based on the talent that they have. It's a playoff team. They just started off so slow because injury bug bit them hard. And you bring in BI, damn near a super team if I'm being honest with you. Look at the starting lineup and tell me that's not one of the best starting lineups on basketball right now. It may not come together to fit, but from player to player to player to player to player, they got as good a starting lineup as any team in the Eastern Conference. So I'm telling you, nobody wants to play Toronto. You don't want to see them coming on the schedule when you're trying to fight for a certain position in your standings. None of the Eastern Conference. You don't want to see them. I don't think they can make the playoffs by any stretch of the imagination, but you don't want to play them in no one-game situation at all. Same thing with Chicago to a degree. I think Chicago could potentially be a competent basketball team in theory, or could they? Now, they probably got rid of a lot of stuff that I think would cross that out. Zach LaVine's gone. They didn't replace him with anything substantial. Nah, cross them out. They're going the other way. Ignore them. So you got to update what's been going on with the trades. They didn't bring themselves back anything. I think they want to tank a little bit. So, yeah, ignore Chicago for sure. I don't expect nothing. They get Lonzo back on an extension for 2 years, $20 million. I wish he didn't sign that. I think he could have got that money somewhere else on a team that could use him a little more than they could. They ain't going nowhere. So that's what I think of Chicago. They're absolutely going nowhere real fast. But, yeah, man, these are things that just going through my mind. I'm really, really interested in seeing how these trades shake up the landscape of the NBA. Those are some massive trades, man. Those are some massive trades. And I didn't see them coming. As I've said a million times, I was wrong about that. A lot of people were telling us big trades were coming. I didn't listen. I was wrong. And I'm glad I was, because we got a lot to talk about in regards to the movement in the NBA, and that's ultimately what I want to see. So I'm very glad I was wrong about that. And now we see how the shakeout goes, man. It's going to be so much to pay attention to. Can a team like San Antonio make a late game push? Makes late season push with De'Aaron Fox now in place? How does this affect Chris Paul? I don't know. Seems like he and De'Aaron Fox are playing together in the starting lineup. De'Aaron's playing some two, I guess. Castle's moved to the bench. I don't know. Whatever the case, Wemby got a lot of guards around him that should be able to do some good things. So if they make a late season push and go on a 7-8 game winning streak, I wouldn't be overly surprised at that at all. De'Aaron Fox is not to be toyed with. So that's something I see there. There was a player that came to mind that came to a new team that I think people expected them to affect the wins. And for some reason, when I thought about them, I was like, they couldn't win where they were at. Why do people think they're going to win so much when they... It's Jimmy. It's Jimmy in Golden State. In my mind's eye, you guys, I think Jimmy and Steph could work in the midterm, like past this season when they retool a little bit. That's a team that could really push for a playoff berth and all of that. But for the rest of this season, I don't think they're going to make playoffs. I don't think they'll make the playoffs. I do think they're slotting some of their young players into bigger positions, for which I like. Maybe Kuminga comes back and makes everybody feel great about his role on the team. Although I just think that they got so much going on with their power forward position that they're never able to actually showcase really anybody for any length of time. Yeah, it's too many different viable, high producing pieces in the same positions in Golden State, which is why I keep saying to fire Mike Dunleavy. Everybody who loves Jonathan Kuminga, you are not raising his value at all. You're about to overpay for that dude to keep him. And you don't even have the role. You got Trace Jackson Davis. You got Quentin Post now in place. You got Draymond Green. You got, there's another name too. Kevon Looney. All of these people need to be given over 20 minutes a game. You don't have enough basketball. You don't have enough game to give them the minutes they need to showcase themselves as high as the value you otherwise want to raise themselves to. Not to mention y'all like running small ball at times. It's just a bad roster. And so the way I saw it was, Jimmy couldn't really move the Miami Heat needle this year at this point. Although he's been out for a lot of the season, so maybe it's not a good way of looking at it. But throughout the course of the regular season, the Miami Heat have been pretty trash over the last several years. Now, when they get to the playoff, he raises his game. But can the Golden State Warriors climb themselves into the playoff picture if he doesn't raise his game in the regular season? You can't wait for the playoffs this year, Jimmy. This team may not make it. Especially the way Steph Curry's been hot and cold all year long. I don't think that betting that Jimmy alone raises this team's overall value when you consider that they depleted their depth to make the trade to a degree, moving Wiggins, one of their key defenders, moving Slow-Mo, one of their key role players, moving Schroeder, who was a high-level producer. They got more shallow. They got older. And essentially, Jimmy hasn't played in a couple weeks because all them damn suspensions. I don't know, man. I tell you, the Golden State Warriors look better to me next year when they retool a little bit around everything they have than they do to finish out the season in the Western Conference. They got all this going on that we've been talking about. I don't think they're going to do anything. I think they're probably going to end the season probably 500. I do. I think they probably end the season a little more, probably a little better than 500, but like, I don't know that it's going to equate to them being much better than they are right now. I don't. Too much redundancy at their forward and center position, in my opinion. So yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know, but that's what came to mind. If he couldn't elevate the Miami Heat in the regular season, what makes you think he's gonna come to Golden State and elevate them in the regular season? That's what the thought was. But yeah, man, that's pretty much all I gotta say, man. There's so much to look at there. Some of the teams that didn't make trades are probably gonna wish they did. You know what I mean? Some of these teams that call themselves playoff teams and they didn't make no moves. I don't know, man. I don't know. Some of them probably couldn't make moves like Minnesota, stuff like that. They didn't really have the assets to do anything. But, you know, they're another team that could push teams like Golden State, Minnesota, Phoenix down there. They didn't really make too many moves. They did move Nurkic out and brought back Caleb Martin or something like that. Both the Martin brothers got traded, ironically. One of them's in Dallas, the other one's in Phoenix now. That could be pretty interesting. But then you think about like Dallas, for example. Like, how good can they be? When Anthony Davis come back and he starts doing that Anthony Davis thing that all of us Laker Nation know what he can do, he start doing that thing he does, I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas starts pushing themselves up the rankings. I wouldn't be surprised if they end the season in 5th place. I wouldn't be surprised. Because their roster is a bit more balanced than it has been. They were built. That trade was built for the short term, for like the right now. So I do expect for them to have a really good rest of the regular season if they can keep everybody healthy. I do expect that. They're gonna have a very good rest of the regular season. So yeah, that's why teams like OKC and Houston, the field has gotten more dangerous around them. The way they started the season pushing past everybody, there's a lot of teams that they've been dealing with got a lot better since they did that. So it's like if they don't adjust to that by continuing to play at a high level, they're gonna find out the losses come a little more frequently than what they're used to in the first half. It's a stronger field than it was, and your lack of experience and stuff like that, some of your weaknesses, are gonna be exploited a bit more in the second half of the season than they were in the first. So that's what I see for teams like Houston and OKC. They may lose their first and second spot. OKC, I don't know if they got quite a cushion at the top of the West, but that can start closing in if they take on another injury or two. So keep an eye open for them to potentially fall out of the first spot. It's a lot of time left. So yeah, that's what I wonder about, man. I just look at the field and I say, man, with Lakers and Dallas just getting stronger and some of the other teams at the bottom, Memphis not getting any worse, I just wonder if there's going to be a much stronger push from the bottom of the West, pushing up against some of those top, better teams up the top. Denver didn't make any trades. Wonder about that for them. I wonder about that. I think they're lacking depth in a field that they probably can't afford to. They got away with that the championship year. They got ousted last year. I ain't got them winning the West. Jokic is the MVP, in my opinion, but I don't see him winning the West. They should have made a move, man. Should have did something. So yeah, that's what I think, man. That's what I think. I think the West is loaded, but I feel a hell of a lot better about my team personally. I just don't think we're very stoppable if we're healthy. I'm sure other teams feel that way as well, but I just think that when you talk about Luka Doncic and LeBron James and the way that they're capable of playing, I don't think you can ever really count on them to lose any single game they're in from here on out. I'm serious when I say that. I know matchups wins a lot of things, but if it comes down to a half-court setting, I trust I'm going to out-efficiency the other team with those two on the floor. BDF 44, I thank you all for watching. I'm out.